tonight, erasing history. Mike Rose shows us the dangers of America's grievance fest. War on women. New York editors ask, are Republican women okay? What is a woman these days?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
I can't.
You can't?
Red hot. The fix to climate change will leave you sweaty, poor, and in the dark this summer. Why it won't save the planet. Metaphor. The Biden administration abandons its Gaza aid pier. What will they do next to save their Israel policy? Welcome to the fairest show on television. First tonight, it's Juneteenth, the day America became a little more perfect, and it's worth celebrating. In 1865, Major General Gordon Granger fulfilled the last meaningful act of the Civil War. He freed the final slaves in Galveston, Texas. And there are a lot of folks these days who make fun of celebrating Juneteenth. In certain circles, it's kind of a joke. It shouldn't be. People who do it are part of the problem. On the list of great things about America, and it's a long list, we as a country, fighting our bloodiest war to free a people from the bonds of slavery, ranks easily in the top 5. Today celebrates the fruits of that very significant sacrifice, the ending of America's original sin, paid for in blood. Today, President Biden issued a proclamation celebrating Juneteenth, 822-word proclamation. It extols all the things the Biden administration does for black Americans. In fact, I read the whole thing. It got all the way to talking about lead pipes. And in those 822 words, he mentions nothing about the greatness of the men who died for the freedom of others. That is perhaps the most significant thing anyone can do, to die for an idea, to die so others may experience the greatness of America. The Union soldiers aren't mentioned once. It is if freedom, if this day, if emancipation came almost by magic to the Biden administration. It wasn't magic. Granger started the Civil War as a captain, and through the war saw many of the 360,000 Union deaths. 360,000 Union soldiers. But Biden's proclamation leaves that out. It's kind of a grievance fest and lists all the ways America has or continues to fail in our pursuit of a more perfect union, all the things he has done. We should celebrate Juneteenth. But in the same breath, we must acknowledge the greatness of the men who fought and died for it, the greatness of the idea of America. Condoleezza Rice did in her piece for the Free Press. You should read it. We link to it on War Notes. On June 19, 1865, Union soldiers arrived in Galveston Bay and freed the last enslaved people in the Confederacy. When we celebrate their freedom, she wrote, we celebrate America itself. But today, and listen here, because this is bipartisan schmuckery by both Trump and Biden. Today, in a larger sense, not just on Juneteenth, neither of our presidential candidates will celebrate what's great about America. They will only tell you what's wrong and who's to blame for it. Over the past few years, it's quite in vogue to tear down statues and protest monuments as we look down the National Mall. At one point of true crazy, some said the Lincoln Memorial had to go, same with Jefferson. Even the Washington Monument was in question. That is where Mike Rowe picks up the story with his new documentary, Something to Stand For.
A film that celebrates a few extraordinary Americans who risked everything to build the nation we call home. Americans who gave us something to fight for, something to be grateful for. And today, all these years later, something to stand for.
Mike Rowe is with us now. Welcome back to the program. It'd be very easy to view this film as Republican-Democrat. You made it, so you tell me. I saw it much more as a traditional values versus progressive values look at America.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's pretty close. In my mind, it was more of an American versus anti-American. I still am clinging to this idea that liberals and conservatives and Democrats and Republicans can still be on the same side with regard to the answer to the question, do you see yourself first and foremost as an American? If you do, then you can kind of walk backwards from there and start looking for other similarities. If you don't, I don't really know what to say to you, right? Because if you're affirmatively opposed to acknowledging the incredible progress that we've made since 1776 in this country, and I don't mean to suggest that we're done. We got a long way to go. This country is never going to be finished. And I'm simply saying in the film, look, we were formed by imperfect men, but my God, the progress is mind-boggling. And this 4th of July, there's still a lot to be proud of, and there's a lot to celebrate, and there's a lot to be grateful for.
Right, in pursuit of a more perfect union. You say, first and foremost, we're Americans. If we can agree on that, then we can work backwards. I'm wondering, though, if it's first and foremost we're Americans who believe in what you just said, that America may not and is not perfect, but it's sort of the last best chance the world has. Patriotism polling from Gallup shows 18% of 18 to 34-year-olds are extremely proud to be American. 35 to 54-year-olds, 40%, 55% of people over the age of 55 are extremely proud to be an American. Is it more than just saying I'm an American?
It is, but to really put that poll into its proper context, you've got to look at the same results 25 years ago. In 1998, it was 71% of Americans described themselves as intensely or extremely patriotic. Today, that number is 39%, and under 30 years of age, it's the numbers you just put up. So I think there's a very, very real phenomenon that happens if you conflate politics with patriotism. Then you force people into a certain kind of box. And when we start to feel bad about our current crop of elected officials in any period of time, it's natural to start feeling bad about the entire experiment. It's also foolish because the experiment was rooted and continues to be rooted in ideas that, to your point, are the envy of the world. So it's well and good to look around at these United States and say, here's where we can improve, here's where we have to do better. But it's madness, and it's self-defeating, and it's self-loathing to look around and say, oh, it's as bad as it's ever been. It's worse than it's ever been. To deny the progress that we've made and to deny the incredible virtue that was baked into the people who made this country what it is, it makes us disconnected from our past, Leland. And when that happens, then it inevitably follows that we won't be able to appreciate the present, and we won't be able to even come close to predicting the future.
All fair points. I'm going to push you, though, a step further. You broke it down into American and anti-American. Is there something inherently disconnected between progressives who push that America is inherently racist or has these institutional problems and celebrating America and putting America first? And you think about the divide, progressive, traditional, urban, rural values. Those who are willing to sign up to fight and die and protect America and to save those values are overwhelmingly rural and traditional. States with the highest enlistment rates per 1,000, Texas, Alaska, Idaho, South Carolina, Georgia. Operation Enduring Freedom. 1 in 4 of the casualties was rural America, despite the fact that rural America accounts for only 19% of adult population in the United States. Without that traditional rural values, no matter what they're called, deplorables, people who cling their guns and religion, ultra MAGA, whatever it is, however they're scorned, they're still the only ones signing up.
It's the trap of the binary. That's all it is. You know, if I go out of my way to say, look, it's the 4th of July and I'm going to fly a flag and I'm going to wear red, white, and blue and I'm going to sing the Star-Spangled Banner at the top of my lungs, then it seems to be an almost knee-jerk reflex that the other side, define them however you want, is going to look at me and say or see a one-dimensional, jingoistic blowhard who has no regard for the troubles that are currently ailing the country. We simply have lost our nuance. We can't say, for instance, in the same sentence that we have tremendous opportunities to improve and an obligation to do so, while at the same time pointing with unapologetic pride from the space from which we came. We have lost the ability to do that. And my hope with the film is to simply say, look, another thing that we can consciously choose to do is to be grateful for the country we have right now, warts and all. And that's simple. You know, I'm not talking about hair color or skin color or star sign or blood type or anything else that's out of our control. We can choose to be grateful. We can choose to work hard. We can choose a great many things. We can choose to pull down our statuary. We can choose to burn our flag. We can choose to deface the monuments and memorials that were built in many cases to honor the people that this film celebrates. All of those are choices. To your question, I would say if you choose to affirmatively deface a monument or a memorial, you're not protesting. You're not a liberal. You're not a conservative. You're not any of those things. You're just anti-American. And I didn't make the movie for you. I made it because of you, but not for you.
Fair enough. And I think you also did it to celebrate a lot of the people that you just talked about, right? The people who fought and many who died, going all the way back to the revolution, for that idea, as imperfect as it is. Here's you meeting a Korean War veteran in D.C.
When were you in the service? Where were you?
51 to 55. I was in Korea from March of 52 to January of 53.
Well, my dad was there that same exact time. He was there in 53 and 54.
Small world. You
weren't in the reservoir. You weren't in Chosin, were you?
Oh, hell no. I didn't want to go there.
Cold, man.
No, them guys, they were the heroes.
You know, it struck me as you were at the World War II memorial when that happened.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something else that's interesting. This film, so your viewers know, it consists of 9 short mysteries, like the old Paul Harvey, the rest of the story, right?
Okay.
And they're very deliberate. They're very deliberately written, and they're very ambitiously recreated. That moment happened while I was setting up to do a stand-up at the memorial. And as I'm sure you know, movies are very, very deliberate things. There's no freelancing. There's no behind-the-scenes stuff. But I saw this guy come in out of the corner of my eye. Andy Michael was his name, with a dozen other guys. They're on an honor flight. And, man, I just said to the director, grab the camera. I just want to go over and talk to this guy. And I'm so glad I did, because everything I was trying to accomplish with the movie and all of its intentional deliberateness was summed up in a random encounter with a man. When you see a 91-year-old guy with tears streaming down his face as he sits in front of a wall of stars and contemplates the price that was paid by others for him and how proud he was to return the favor, when you see that and you got a film crew with you and you don't point the cameras or get him into your project, well, that would make you an idiot.
All fair. On D-Day, I asked a couple of survivors, or I guess you could say veterans of D-Day, both, if their buddies who died would be proud of what America has become. The answers to it were fascinating. Give us some hope to end this. Did you find people who would become the greatest generation again if called upon?
Well, no, but I wasn't looking for them either. What I was looking to do was simply tap the country on the shoulder and say, look, I get it. There's a lot of new curricula in schools. There's a lot of revisionist history. There's a lot of looking back through the lens of today's values. It's so much easier to judge than it is to think. And I wanted people, first of all, I just wanted to entertain them and tell a good story, but I also want them to really think about what they would do in the shoes of the people that we're going to meet in their time. And to also ask yourself candidly, what's your great-great-great-great-grandkid going to think 160, 200 years from now? When they look back at us, right, are they going to think about who we were and what we did in 2024, or are they going to judge? Are they going to pull the statues down? What are they going to do? What are we going to do with the meat eaters 200 years from now, right, when we look back? How are we going to remember them? So, look, there's room for grace and there's room for humility. In fact, those two things are essential, I think, if we're going to move forward in anything that doesn't look like some kind of crazy civil war.
Well, that is both profound and, I guess in some ways a little scary to think about, that we now have to consider that as a possibility, especially on this day where what the Civil War was about finally ended. Mike, thank you. We appreciate it.
Anytime, Leland. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We wrote about our thoughts on Juneteenth first in War Notes. That's our daily newsletter. Comes out every day at 4:05 Eastern. You can subscribe for free at warnotes.com. You can also reply to the email. We read them all and share some of your thoughts on the air. Also see you on social media at Leland Vittert. Turns out Democrats have their own war on women. How New York Magazine went full sexist. How can women be women and support Donald Trump? Is it possible when we come back? And war drums, Israel says they might start World War III. Can President Biden hold them off? Sometimes people say the quiet part out loud. New York Magazine is out with a new cover story. And here is the cover. Are Republican women okay? That's the actual cover. And don't worry, the article lived up to everything you could possibly dream it would be. With us now, Amber Duke, D.C. editor of The Spectator, Meredith McGraw, national political correspondent for Politico. Meredith, get to the politics in this one minute. Amber, I want to start with you. This is from the piece. On the cusp of an election season that could further reshape this democracy and women's place within it, the questions facing the women of the right are tricky. Are they supposed to be cutthroat or cute, cold enough to kill a dog, or warm enough to bake an apple pie? To whom is their devotion chiefly addressed? God, husband, country, or Trump? Aside from the sort of dripping with antipathy and disdain that exists in the article, are they necessarily wrong?
Yes, I do think that they're wrong. I mean, first of all, this article spends most of its time complaining about the historic misogyny and sexism that women in politics have had to face throughout their careers. People like Hillary Clinton and Sarah Palin constantly having to worry about what they looked like, how they were dressed, and then turns around and does the exact same thing to modern Republican women, complaining that they're too brash, they like guns too much, sometimes they dress in workout clothes and sometimes they dress in pantsuits, and how all of that is apparently unacceptable because they hold the wrong political beliefs. And conservative women have been dealing with this from the left for a long time. Hillary Clinton infamously said that women who didn't vote for her were probably pressured by their husbands or by their fathers. Michelle Obama said that women who didn't vote for Hillary were silencing their own voice. You had Michelle Wolf at the White House Correspondents' Dinner saying that she hoped Kellyanne Conway ended up under a tree. This is all just attempting to ridicule conservative women for the sake of silencing their voices.
So, Meredith, I think we can all agree that if Joe Biden wins re-election, if Democrats continue to hold the Senate, it's going to be because of the women vote. Democrats think that as well. It worked for them in 22 to run positively on being the voice of women. How does demonizing so many women play into that?
Well, I think this article, this essay, looks at Republican women as a monolith, as they're all the same. They should all be held to the same standards, and that's simply not true. And it really looks at specifically some of the loudest voices in the party who are women, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and others who, frankly, they don't represent the entire country. They represent their constituents.
I mean, I would even argue among just the names you tossed out there, these are vastly different women in terms of political views and in terms of political style and in terms of personal personality, everything.
Everything. But, you know, women are going to play an important role in this upcoming election, and Democrats are counting on that. Polling has showed that suburban women in particular in these battleground states. They've talked about issues like abortion being a real motivator for them to get out to the polls come November. So we're going to continue to see women, female voters be a focus from both the left and the right as we move forward.
All right, so this is one of the women who was featured in the article is running for Secretary of State in my home state of Missouri. Valentina for Secretary of State is her Twitter account. Take a look at the ad.
The Second Amendment shall not be infringed. I am the most pro-gun candidate in the history of America, and I will never give up my guns. They are the only tool we have to fight back against a tyrannical government. So give me liberty or give me death.
I think that was set to a rap song at the same time. Amber, to be fair, right, at some point, there is a lot of Republican women who play into the stereotype, and it works on social media at times. Why is it that this article was written in the first place, you think?
That's a great question. I think there's probably a motivation for one of trying to warn women who are flirting with the idea of voting Republican, or maybe who already are, this is how we view you. This is how we will denigrate you if you decide to defect and become a traitor to your gender. I mean, conservative women have been hit with accusations of internalized misogyny. And I think, honestly, there's a lot of projection going on here. If we look at the happiness surveys that are published in the New York Times every year, we see that conservative women consistently have a double-digit happiness gap over liberal women. We know that liberal women are more likely to be prescribed antidepressants and anxiety medication. So maybe the real question we should be asking is are liberal women okay?
Okay. To that end, you think about members of Congress on the left who have some, shall we say, curious at best views. This was Cori Bush, also from Missouri, Democrat. And no, we're not just picking on Missouri people, talking to PBS. Take a listen.
This lady came to us and she had these tumors. I mean, she wanted us to like feel them. And I just remember I put my hand on her and my hand just began to move. And the lumps that were there were no longer there. And she was so happy and she like went on about her day. And I never saw her again.
This is a member of Congress in an interview claiming to be a witch doctor, Meredith. Are Democratic women held to the same standards as Republican women?
Well, that's the first I've seen of this clip, to be honest with you.
That says something, though, right? I mean, if Marjorie Taylor Greene had said those same things, or any Republican woman had said those things in Congress, it would be all over, right?
It is quite a claim. I think overall women are held to a different standard. And, something I've noticed as a reporter covering 2024, I did feel like when it came to coverage of Nikki Haley, that we saw less of some of those misogynist articles that we saw in previous elections, talking about her, appearance or different things like that. So on balance, I thought that was a positive.
It was a step forward. I mean, there were a lot more, I would say, and I was on the trail with her, a lot more substantive conversations with her. And I think that may have played into a little bit of feelings by the media of enjoying having some reasonable challenger to Donald Trump. But Amber, we'll end with you. Is it right to say to women who support Donald Trump, you may like his policies, but I don't know there's a lot of women or even men who would want their daughters to date Donald Trump? And from purely that standpoint, the article asks, I think, some important questions, right?
I think you could say the same thing about Joe Biden, though. I mean, there's a history of these videos showing him behaving somewhat inappropriately with young girls. There's the revelations from the Ashley Biden diary. I think when it comes down to brass tacks, women are not looking for someone to be president that they want to date or that they would imagine as their husband, but they want somebody who's going to do the best policy for their family, which includes securing the southern border, tackling crime, making sure that the economy functions for them and their family. Those are things that women think about all the time when they're going to the ballot box.
It's a fascinating point. And so, all right, Meredith, you now get the last word. The polling in 2022 showed that abortion was this sort of key issue, and especially with the president not being on the ballot, you could vote on the Senate. Suburban women, this group that we study so significantly and are so focused on, do they care about these sort of very pointed women's issues when they have to make choices at the grocery store about whether to buy grapes or eggs?
I think that is going to be the big question that we're going to see answered in 2024. We keep seeing women say that they care about things like abortion, but at the same time, immigration and the economy continue to be real motivators for people. So that's going to be the real ticket come 2024.
Ladies, thank you both. We have an ask in, or we're going to put an ask in for the author of the article. Love to talk to her as well. Iran smells blood in the water. Their terror group in Lebanon just put out this video of potential targets in Israel. What exactly is President Biden's plan to stop World War III from starting? Breaking news this evening, live look at the Israel-Lebanon border right now overlooking Haifa. We are at perhaps the most dangerous moment in the Middle East since the Yom Kippur War. Israel and Hezbollah now threaten each other with a first strike. That would make the Gaza war, what we've been talking about since October 7th, look like child's play. And it is very difficult to have a scenario where the United States or Russia does not get involved in an Israel-Hezbollah war. World War III. This is not hyperbolic. The Iranian-backed militias said they have over 1 million rockets and 100,000 fighters standing by. This is video Hezbollah published of their drones flying over potential targets in northern Israel. So things are about as dangerous as they get. And the New York Times reports the Biden administration is abandoning right now its $230 million aid pier in Gaza. Remember, that was the thing that was going to solve all of this and bring happiness to Gaza. In a perfect metaphor for Biden's Israel policy, the pier broke apart multiple times. And video now shows it thrashing about in the sea, void of any aid, with porta potties you can see out there in the distance at the ready. Niall Stanage, White House columnist for our partners at The Hill, joins us now. Last time we talked about this, you said President Biden risks becoming impotent or appearing impotent in the Middle East. Have things gotten worse since then?
Yes, I think they have. I mean, the situation in Gaza has worsened further because of the lack of humanitarian aid, among other things. There's the situation in the northern border. The president has dispatched a special envoy there, as you know, trying to de-escalate a situation that threatens to spiral out of control and has been amped up by both sides.
Amped up by both sides, and you think that there are major political divisions in the United States that are causing problems. Things that Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, who I know you have certain feelings about, tried to exploit. Here he is talking about the U.S. withholding weapons and ammunition.
It's inconceivable that in the past few months, the administration has been withholding weapons and ammunition to Israel. Israel, America's closest ally, fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our other common enemies. Give us the tools and we'll finish the job a lot faster.
U.S. officials say Netanyahu's accusation video hurts efforts to avoid a war in Lebanon. This is Barak Ravid, one of the great reporters on Israel relations. 3 Biden administration officials tell Axios they are concerned that Netanyahu's actions create daylight between the two allies. Couldn't one argue that there is already a lot of daylight and that was created by the Biden administration?
I'm not sure in what way you could argue that. I mean, the criticism that I hear most often, admittedly from the left, is that Biden has embraced Netanyahu too closely, while the death toll has climbed, while humanitarian aid has been narrowed or restricted entirely, and that has cost him with his own party. So when you say there's too much daylight, what are you thinking of beyond the one arms shipment that was paused?
No, I'm saying that the White House clearly has put constraints on Israel. They asked them to delay going into Rafah. There was an enormous amount of pressure to make a deal on the hostages. We can argue either way whether that is a good thing or not, but clearly the give us a hunting license with no bag limit, which is what Benjamin Netanyahu wants, has not been given.
Well, we're talking about human beings here, so let's be careful about metaphors about hunting licenses.
We're also talking about terrorists here.
The reason that there were restraints on Rafah was because there were going to be thousands of civilians slaughtered. That's why the arms shipment was paused, because the Biden administration took the view that you shouldn't drop 2,000-pound bombs on heavily built-up areas.
Okay, so we look forward now, either way. How much should the left worry, and maybe this plays into it, that a war between Hezbollah and Israel changes everything, and it changes the political dynamic, right? Because those who talk all the time about the Palestinians and the plight of the Palestinians and everything else, they don't have the same argument when it comes to Lebanon. If there is a force-on-force war between Israel and Hezbollah, the world is going to be forced, the free world is going to be forced to embrace Israel once again, will they not?
I'm not sure that they will, because I think that Mr. Netanyahu's actions have already caused a deepening isolation for Israel. We know he has very low approval ratings at home. There is criticism within Israel that he is using war and the threat of expanding the war for his own political purposes.
His numbers are going up.
Now, yeah, to 32%, which isn't much to brag about. So, look, I think that the problem here is that both sides have a motivation, by which I mean both sides, Israel and Hezbollah, have a motivation to amplify and to further elevate the tensions here, and that's very, very dangerous.
And fair to say the political capital of the Biden administration with both sides is pretty low.
Absolutely, very low, because they're no longer seen as an honest broker and they're distrusted by almost everyone.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Power grids across America are straining to keep up with demand from air conditioners. Yeah, I bet your air conditioner's on right now to beat the record heat. Has our rush for alternative energy sources left more of us vulnerable, well, to high prices, empty wallets, and blackouts? Bar Harbor, Maine, in June. The real feel temperature in Bar Harbor, Maine, 96 degrees today.
We're just trying to stay inside. We're just trying to catch some AC.
It's really hot, and like your body just like needs a lot of water just to make sure you're not dehydrated and stuff like that.
Is it hot? Is it really, really hot?
Staying hydrated, sitting in a cool place.
Honestly, the AC in here is pretty nice. So if it's like above 90, it's like I'll be in here.
Be having a margarita too. You might have heard it's hot in America right now, but in a cruel twist of fate, the same people who warned about climate change brought about the very issue we are here in. They brought about the end of the very power plants needed to keep us cool. Not only will we all pay about 8% more for electricity this summer, many parts of America, you can see there highlighted in orange, won't have electricity. The new green energy generators won't make up for all the coal and natural gas plants taken offline to save the planet. Founder and executive director of Power to the Future, Daniel Turner, is with us now. You're going to tell me you predicted this, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you look at all of the different factors that are causing us to use more electricity. We can talk about people entering the country, right? No one knows how many have entered in the last couple of years, but all of them are using electricity. So we have more people. This administration is pushing us towards electrification. They don't want you to use a gas-powered leaf blower. They want you to use an electric one. Same with the stove. Same with a car. Your car EV charging station uses more electricity than the rest of your house combined. So on the one hand, we're pushing our nation towards an electrification, but yet those reliable sources of electricity we're taking offline. So this was inevitable that this is going to happen. And I'll predict, Leland, it's going to get much, much worse because it's only mid-June. By August, it could be cataclysmic. And that's not being hyperbolic. That's just being purely scientific based on numbers.
All right, so you look at that, the heat index map, and it's also going to be a lot more expensive, right? Average monthly electricity bill, 2020 was at $117, 2024, $150. And this summer, it's going to go up even more. Just to be fair, though, Daniel, and I get that the folks who support fossil fuels and who support the freedom to have the kind of car we want and everything else are saying this makes our point that we're not ready for electrification and the green grid isn't ready and our power grid isn't ready and everything else. But I almost sense I don't want to say hysteria among you guys, but are you guys overstating just how bad this is going to be? You said cataclysmic. Come on, everything's not going to go black one day, is it?
Why wouldn't it? What's keeping our energy grid afloat? right? Is it goodwill and
I don't
good
know,
intention?
smart people and circuit breakers or something, right?
What's keeping our electric grid afloat is reliable energy that is produced without intermittency. It's produced whether or not the sun is shining, whether or not the wind is blowing, and that is clearly nuclear, which I support, and it's also coal and it's natural gas. And if you want to look at why I say it's cataclysmic, don't look at America. Look at countries that have done this harder and longer and stronger than we have, and ask when it works. We'll pick one country and we'll call it Germany, right? They've been doing this for 25 years. German electric rates went from 9 cents per kilowatt hour to $7 per kilowatt hour last year. Now, the German parliament had to cap it for the German citizens, but that doesn't mean that costs less. That just means the government is subsidizing it now. So ask Germany, when does it work, right? Vladimir Putin is now the largest supplier of Russian natural gas to Europe because we have an LNG ban. So you have a destroyed German economy. The economy of Germany is in contraction. It's the worst performing of the G7. You have electric bills that have gone up by 1,000%, and you have Vladimir Putin waging war. So Germany, when does the green part kick in, right? That's my question for Joe Biden. When does it start to work? It's been 3 years. When does it get good?
Other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, it's going to be a great play, I promise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Look, you know what? Maybe we'll have to use, pencil and paper to do TV with you. We'll only be able to have a phoner with you in July or August. We'll see if it happens. All right.
And look,
Daniel,
I don't want it to be
much.
this way, right? I'm not cheering against America. I'm not cheering against Germany. I don't want our American citizens to suffer. But you have to ask these people who are pushing an agenda that have no understanding of the electric grid, no understanding of the economy, why they think it will work. A simple point of view, right? If you use more fossil fuels to make an EV.
I got it. And I think we're going to have somebody else.
How are we using fewer fossil fuels driving EVs? That's just an honest question. And the response of the Biden administration is, we'll subsidize it, $7,500 tax credit. That doesn't solve the problem.
All right. You made your point. We'll see you soon. Stay cool. I think that's the new moniker this summer. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Many called Fox News state TV. Lots of people called Fox News state TV under President Trump. Why nobody will say the same thing about MSNBC under Joe Biden?
It's the end of politics. Let's just do it by force. Because physically, we mean it just the way we say we're saying it. We mean it just the way you're hearing it. We're coming for you.
The Economist just gave Donald Trump a 2 in 3 chance of beating Joe Biden. At the first of the month, the betting markets put the race as a toss-up. Since then, Trump has taken a substantial lead, and MSNBC is terrified.
They're trying to end the American system of government. They're trying to bring about a revolution against the American system of government and against the United States of America. And in this story, we're the Americans. We're alive as American citizens in that time, and we're going to be the ones who decide if the American system of government survives or if it's taken over instead by a strongman authoritarian form.
It's like we're at the end of the democracy. And to be fair, Fox News kind of said the same thing about Donald Trump in the reverse, right? NewsNation contributor Colby Hall writes in Mediaite, the media labeled Fox News state-run TV under Trump as MSNBC getting a pass under Biden. MSNBC is regularly eschewed airing negative news about the Biden administration in favor of going all in on the threats of a second Trump administration. Colby is here. Is it state TV or campaign TV?
I mean, it's outrage infotainment packaged as news. I think MSNBC is doing their viewers in the country a disservice by going all in on, sort of the dangers of Trump, because they never ever once bring up anything sort of reasonable or anything critical of President Biden. Viewers of MSNBC believe that Biden's aced the test, that he's not made one sort of mistake or gaffe in his first 3.5 years. And that's not realistic. That's not true. And I don't think it's helping Biden in the polls.
Look, we've heard that Joe Biden's favorite program is Morning Joe, right? That he supposedly watches as he gets up. This was Mark Leibowitz, a soundbite you highlighted this morning or yesterday. Take a listen.
So the American people know Joe Biden's age. They also know that with that age comes wisdom, comes experience, comes judgment. That's why they elected him in the first place. And I would also say that they understand that those qualities stand in stark contrast to everybody else on the other side, particularly as it relates to Donald Trump.
Okay, so that was from Inside with Jen Psaki. Now we'll play Leibowitz.
I think the fact that they're going to shut off the mics is, I think, as John said, potentially, kind of a backhanded break for Donald Trump, because it was such a disaster in 2020. I think a corollary to that is, what's the cutaway going to look like? I mean, are we going to get to see exasperated expressions and sighing?
This may be the double bounce to your article, but I think it brings up an important point. If you set up this situation that Donald Trump is going to end the democracy and the threats of violence that Donald Trump brings, does it not sort of set up and inspire the same kind of visceral feelings and threats of violence and anything must be done to protect the republic that MSNBC warns about every day, but sets it up among the left?
Absolutely. It's a great point. And by the way, this is what we heard very much on Fox News for a long time, the threat of socialism. You still hear it to some degree. And, two rights don't make a wrong. I heard a lot of criticism from the left today saying, oh, but Fox is so maybe, yeah, they do the same thing. They're both hurting the country. And MSNBC has completely gotten a pass, whereas MSNBC delights and CNN delight in mocking and ridiculing Fox News. So, it's the extremists of each party that are getting the microphone, and that's hurting America.
All right, well, and then there's just us here in the middle calling balls and strikes. We have no foibles of any type. That's why we enjoy having you, Colby. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Leland.
All right. Another man with no foibles, Chris Cuomo. He's coming up from New York, and I will see you tomorrow.